Today's first video with news stories mostly from Ethiopia and Eritrea as well. Firstly, last month Ethiopian federal government constituted a committee to hold talks with Tigray representatives to find a solution to Tigray conflict. This committee, formed by the government, held its first meeting a few hours ago. Not the meeting between Tigray and Ethiopian government representatives. It was an internal meeting of this party, of this committee. Second news story is about Oromo Liberation Army. Today, some pro-Ethiopian government news sources shared details about OLA's funding in a district of North Shoa zone of Oromia region, where Oromo Liberation Army is collecting taxes. Not only Amharas but also Oromos living in this district are paying taxes to Oromo Liberation Army. Third news story from Benishangul Gumuz region of Ethiopia. We have two news stories from Benishangul Gumuz. Firstly, according to government-backed news sources, government forces have taken control of a town which was under the control of Gumuz fighters for more than a year. Secondly, another news story, renewed fighting is being reported between Amhara forces and fighters in Benishangul Gumuz, and at least 50 have been killed in this renewed fighting. Fourthly, we have a small clip for you showing the plight of Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia. A video is being shared crying. Eritrean refugees can be seen, elderly women, children can be seen, who had rented some buses to visit a monastery, but Ethiopian federal police stopped the vehicles. They were unloaded and they were sent back to Amhara region. Lastly, statistics are being shared by Ethiopian government departments that inflation has decreased for the first time in 4 months. In June, inflation has decreased. We have some statistics for you. Firstly, viewers, we know that on the 27th of June last month, Ethiopian government formed a committee to negotiate with Tigray representatives. The committee was formed after extensive discussions held at Central Committee and Executive Committee meetings of ruling Prosperity Party chaired by Ethiopian PM Abiy. Tigray has not formed any committee so far. Tigray did not respond to the formation of this 7-member committee. It was a 7-member committee. It is being led by Metekel Benishangul, who is Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Ethiopia. This committee held its first internal meeting on Tuesday, chaired by Metekel Benishangul. You can see the pictures shared by Ridwan Hussain, National Security Advisor, who is also a member of this committee, who shared these pictures. So, meeting was held on Tuesday. Discussions were held and subcommittees have been formed and responsibilities have been distributed. It's a 7-member committee, viewers. Metekel Benishangul is leading it, chairing the meeting. Secondly, Ridwan Hussain, who is National Security Advisor, he is member of this committee. Thirdly, we have Tamaskan Tirone, who is head of Ethiopian Intelligence Agency, NIS, National Intelligence Security Services. Fourthly, Gideon Timotheus, Minister of Justice of Ethiopia. Fifthly, Lieutenant General Birhano Bakale. He is former Chief of Military Intelligence and former head of Republican Guards. Then Hassan Abdul Qadir, a former ambassador and coordinator of Prosperity Party. And lastly, Getachew Jamber, who is deputy president of the Amhara region. So this is 7-member committee which held its first internal meeting about how to start talks, which code of conduct will be adopted, which guidelines will govern this committee's dealing with their representatives. So internal discussions were held at the meeting held a few hours ago. Now, what is the purpose of this meeting? Ethiopian government is sending a message to international community that it is committed to peace process. It wants to continue. It wants to press ahead with negotiations with a Tigray government. It has formed a committee. Committee is holding internal meetings, but no response from Tigray government. Ethiopian government is insisting that talks should be held under the auspices of African Union. Tigray in a statement made it clear that Kenya should lead the process. African Union can be part of the talks, but process should be led by Kenya. And we know that in Kenya, election is due to be held next month, August. Uhuru Kenyatta, who is being backed by Tigray as a mediator, is of course busy in Kenya. And Tigray has not formed any committee to talk to Ethiopian government so far. I personally think Tigray should make its position clear. Does Tigray want to negotiate without the resumption of basic services in Tigray, which has not happened so far? Telecom, banking, electricity not restored so far, suspended since November 2020. Will Tigray negotiate or not if there is no resumption of basic services? And secondly, if Ethiopian government insists that only African Union will lead this process of talks, will Tigray press ahead with talks or not? So Tigray should make its position clear. Why is that Tigray has not formed any committee? Are there internal issues in Tigray? And there are issues because some opposition parties are opposing this peace process. They say that Tigray government led by TPLF should work towards independence of Tigray, and that without the resumption of basic services, there is no point in talking to Ethiopian government. So there are internal problems in Tigray too. So while there are internal problems in Tigray and there are some conditions laid out by Tigray government which are not being fulfilled by Ethiopian government, this process of start of talks is being delayed. What I think is that Tigray should issue a new statement. It should clarify what is its position. 2 days ago, we heard that Tigray was about to announce names of the members of a committee which will hold talks with Ethiopian federal government representatives. So far, we have not seen any such announcement from Tigray government. Ethiopian government is in talks with international financial institutions. It is receiving grants, trying to secure loans as well from World Bank, IMF. 3 grants have been given to the government by World Bank. EU has increased its humanitarian assistance for Ethiopia. So Ethiopia wants to continue receiving these loans, grants from EU, from World Bank, from US-backed institutions. And that is why government is sending a message to the international community that it is committed to peace process. Delay is from Tigray side. Tigray must clarify its position about peace process, about start of talks with Ethiopian government. Second news story is from the Oromo region of Ethiopia, where Oromo Liberation Army armed group has been operating for years. led by Jalmaro. Who is funding this group? Does OLA collect taxes from the people of Oromia? Do Amhara diaspora community members support Oromo Liberation Army? According to some pro-Ethiopian government news sources, details have been shared from a district in North Shore zone of Oromia region. Name of this place is Silale. The sources claim that 52 Kabyles of Silale are paying taxes to Oromo Liberation Army. And in recent days, OLA collected 100,000 birds and 50,000 Ethiopian birds only from Silale, which is close to Oromia Amhara border. And these taxes are being paid not only by Amharas but Oromos as well. Oromo local population is paying taxes to OLA. Now, firstly, definitely OLA is backed by diaspora. Diaspora community is funding OLA. Secondly, OLA is in charge of towns and cities. So it is working like a government in some places. It is collecting taxes like local governments collect taxes. It's not something new, because OLA is in charge of several towns. Ethiopian government, Oromo regional government, they don't acknowledge that OLA is in control of key towns and cities. If 52 Kabyles are paying taxes to OLA, it means that OLA is in charge of dozens of these Kabyles. That is why people are paying taxes. Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy for to collect taxes from these 52 Kabyles. It means OLA is in charge of some Kabyles, some towns where it is running government, local government, and people are paying taxes to OLA just like people pay taxes to local governments. Having said that, yes, OLA relies on funding by locals. Locals support OLA voluntarily or they are forced to do it, we don't know, but yes, locals do fund OLA. And Oromo diaspora has been known for years that it funds Oromo Liberation Army. Thirdly, what's the news story? Two news stories from Benishangul Gumuz region of Ethiopia. Firstly, Kamashi zone of BG, where a town which was under the control of Gumuz fighters for more than a year has been retaken by government forces, and pro-government news sources are sharing it as a breaking news that Dadisa, a town in Kamashi, has come under the control of government forces. Before this breaking news, no one told us that Dadisa was under Gumuz control, Gumuz fighters' control for more than a year. Government has been saying that situation has come under control in BG. Gumuz fighters have been pushed out of town, cities, and government was in control of main town cities. But you see now what's happening. Government is admitting that Dadisa in Kamashi was under Gumuz control for more than a year, now retaken by government forces. Secondly, Metekel zone of Benishangul Gumuz, here heavy fighting is being reported in Dangor Woreda. This isn't the first time that we are hearing about fighting in Dangor. And in clashes, fighting in Dangor, mostly Amhara forces are involved. And once again, we are hearing that in Dangor Woreda, Birtukan Sisse is the name of the place where clashes between Amhara forces and local fighters are being reported. Some say dozens have been killed. Some say around 50 have been killed in these clashes ongoing since Monday. Heavy clashes, Amhara forces involved, some say Amhara militias involved too. BG is destabilized no matter what government says. We know that OLA has its presence in BG. Gumuz fighters have been operating in BG for years. Despite government's claims, we know that BG is destabilized. Both Metekel and Kamashi, in both these zones, we have seen off and on clashes, large-scale clashes between local fighters and regional forces of federal forces. Fourthly, we have a new story about Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia. Around 100,000 Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia have been suffering, especially after the start of Tigray conflict. This suffering increased manifold. All parties have been involved in attacks on these poor Eritrean refugees. They were relocated from Tigray to a refugee camp in Amhara region, the Bath refugee camp in the Amhara region during Tigray conflict, and a video is being shared. Dozens of Eritrean refugees, children, women crying because they rented buses to visit a monastery, but Ethiopian federal forces stopped the convoy of the buses. They were unloaded, they were forced to return to Dabat refugee camp. Disturbing video, crying Eritrean refugees can be seen. Small clip for you. Before that, are these refugees not allowed to visit any place outside the camps where they are being kept? If there are restrictions on their movement, yes, they should respect the decision of the government. If there are no restrictions, then why is that Ethiopian federal police stopped these innocent refugees and pushed them back to refugee camps? Government would try to keep the refugees at refugee camps. That happens because once the refugees start mixing with population, local population, so it becomes difficult to track them, it becomes difficult to be aware of their activities, of their movements. All governments do that. Refugees are kept under surveillance, but their rights are also respected. If World Food Programme, aid agencies are providing aid to these refugees, of course they would want the refugees to be at refugee camps. If they are dispersed, how will aid agencies support these refugees? We don't know which type of restrictions have been imposed on the movement of the refugees in Ethiopia, but law of the land should be respected. If Ethiopian government has enforced some laws regarding the movement of refugees should respect the laws. Having said that, it's the responsibility of Ethiopian government, responsibility of aid agencies, that the refugees are protected, that they are provided with food, with aid, which is mostly being given not by Ethiopian government, but by aid agencies. Watch this small 10-second clip showing crying Eritrean refugees stopped and forced to return to the Bath refugee camp in the Amhara region of Ethiopia. Lastly, viewers, according to Ethiopian Central Statistics Agency, for the first time in 4 months, inflation is decreasing. In June, inflation stood at 34%, and in May, inflation was 37.2%. From March, inflation started rising. March, April, May, there was rise in inflation, and in June last month there was slight decrease, and from 37.2% inflation dropped to 34%. Food prices have decreased a little too, from 43.9% to 38.1%. Though Ethiopian government a few days ago hiked petrol prices, petrol diesel prices have been increased. But it seems that financial support for Ethiopian government by World Bank, by EU, by US seems to be having a positive impact on Ethiopian economy. Ethiopian government has received some grants and government is in talks with some countries for rescheduling of its debts and for securing new loans as well. That is why perhaps we see that inflation is dropping, food prices are decreasing slightly. No tremendous decrease in the prices of food items. At least food prices are not increasing, inflation is not increasing. Let's see, will this trend continue next month or not this month, July? That remains to be seen. Thank you for watching.